He asked his boss to be his fake girlfriend for one night. She said yes without thinking. Before we begin the story, don't forget to subscribe and follow Tender Bonds. Like and share our story. The toolbox was on the passenger seat because Silas hadn't decided what to do with it yet. He told his mother he was donating it. He told Deb at the office he was keeping it for parts. Neither was true. It sat there on the gray cloth seat of his F-150 with its rust-eaten hinges, and the latch that only opened if you knew to lift and press at the same time. A trick Trace had showed him 11 years ago in the gravel lot behind the machine shop on Route 83. The day Trace had pressed the whole kit and caboodle into Silas's chest and said, "I'm buying new. Keep these or scrap 'em, I don't care." He had cared, obviously. Trace had cared about everything he pretended not to. January in Millhaven, Ohio was the kind of cold that didn't announce itself. No drama, no wind. Just a flat gray sky pressing down on flat gray fields until the horizon ceased to exist and you drove through a world erased to its essentials. Asphalt, fence posts, the occasional gas station burning white against nothing. Silas drove with the heat on low. Always had. He heard Cassidy's Tahoe before he saw it, pulling into the lot of the Sunoco where he'd said he would wait. He knew the engine the way you know a voice. She parked alongside him, and he watched through the glass as she cut the ignition and sat for exactly 1 second before getting out, not hesitating, just organizing, the way she always did. She opened his passenger door without asking. "Move it," she said. He looked at the toolbox, just set it on the floor. She picked it up and held it for a moment, testing the weight, and then she tried the latch. It didn't open. She tried again. "You have to lift and press," he said, "both at the same time." She didn't try again. She set it carefully on the floor behind the seat, buckled in, and looked out the windshield at the county road. "How far?" she said. 20 minutes if the low section's passable." "It won't be." "Probably not." They drove. The fields were bare and the sky was the color of old dishwater, and neither of them spoke for the first mile, which was not uncomfortable, because 6 years of shared job trailers and pre-dawn site walks had long since burned away the need to fill silence. "You're sure your mother hasn't told everyone?" Cassidy said. "She's told everyone." A pause, then, "How long have we been together in this version?" He'd been dreading that question. "I didn't specify." "Silas." "I told her I was seeing someone." She drew her own timeline. "I need a timeline. Your cousin's wife is going to ask." "Joni asks everything. So give me something to work with." He looked at the road. "A year, maybe." She was quiet. Then, "Why a year?" He didn't answer right away. The low section of Route 83 appeared ahead, road dropping, water sitting across it in a dark lens, thinner than he'd feared. He slowed. "Because a year sounds like something real," he said. She looked at him then, a look he didn't examine, and he drove them through the water. The McCready house was a 2-story colonial with every window lit and 4 cars already in the gravel drive. Silas pulled in and they sat for a moment. He could feel her organizing again, the small interior shift. "Okay," she said, "tell me one true thing I can use." "About what?" "About you, something your mother would know." He thought, "I get to job sites 40 minutes early, walk the ground before anyone shows up." "Why?" "I don't know, I just do." She nodded. "One true thing about me. I call Nell every night at 8. If your family sees me step out, that's what it is." "I know," he said. She looked at him. "I know you know," she said. "I'm telling you so you can tell them." They got out into the cold. Joni opened the door before they knocked, which Silas had expected, and pulled Cassidy into an embrace that lasted slightly too long for a first meeting, which he had not expected. "We are so glad," Joni said, drawing back to look at her. "He never brings anyone. We were starting to think he was a confirmed bachelor." "He nearly is," Cassidy said and smiled. Beckett came across the living room with his hand out. 45, built like someone who'd played high school football and then just kept eating the same way. He shook Silas's hand and then looked at Cassidy with the uncomplicated warmth of a man who was glad for his cousin and not bothering to hide it. Inside, the house had the smell of a January party, people warm against cold air, baked cheese from somewhere, someone's good perfume. Silas's mother arrived 40 minutes late, which was 39 minutes later than she needed to be to make an entrance. She was 68 and had the controlled, appraising eyes of someone who had been measuring rooms all her life. She hugged Silas and then looked at Cassidy the way an inspector looks at a foundation. "So," she said, "how did he ask you out the first time?" Silas felt the air leave the room. Cassidy didn't miss a beat. She turned to him with an expression of fond, patient amusement, an expression he had never seen her use at work, not in 6 years, and said, "You want to tell it, or should I?" "You tell it," he said, because he had absolutely nothing. Cassidy looked back at his mother. "He asked me to dinner," she said, "by telling me the water main at the Defiance job was going to fail if we didn't address it, and that he'd go over the site plan with me, but he'd need to eat first." She paused. "I said okay, and we went to a diner on Route 83, and he talked about the water main for 45 minutes. His mother was already smiling. "That sounds exactly like him." "It is exactly like him," Cassidy said. And the worst part, or maybe not the worst part, was that it was true. Not the Defiance job, not the water main, but the shape of it. The refusal to say the thing directly. The business folded around the personal like a wrapper. He stood there holding 2 glasses of wine and understood that she had not invented a story. She had taken something true and moved it 3 inches to the left and called it fiction, which meant she had been paying attention in a way he hadn't known about. After dinner, there was a fire in the den and too many people in too few chairs, and Cassidy ended up beside him on a love seat that required a decision about proximity. She sat closer than professional. He didn't move away. His Uncle Ray was on his 2nd bourbon and his 3rd hunting story. The room was warm. At 8 o'clock, Cassidy's shoulder touched his and she reached for her coat on the arm of the love seat without a word, and he said, just low enough for her, "Take the kitchen, it's quieter." She looked at him, the look again. "I know," he said, "go." She slipped out. He stayed and watched Ray's story reach its graceless conclusion and thought about Nell on the other end of a phone call, 9 years old, and talking to her mother every night no matter what, the two of them building a rope bridge across whatever distance separated them and testing it nightly. It was not a small thing. Cassidy came back and settled beside him, closer than before. "Good," he said. "Good," she said, and then, after a breath, "She wants to FaceTime tomorrow. I told her I was at a party." "What'd she say?" "She said, 'Whose party?' I said, 'A man from work.'" A pause. "She asked if I liked him." He looked at the fire. "What'd you say?" he said. "I said, 'Go to sleep, Nell.'" The fire popped. Ray was starting another story. Silas was aware of the nearness of her shoulder, and the warmth and the specific quality of the room, the way a party at its best becomes a kind of permission, the crowd and the noise creating a shelter inside which a smaller thing can exist privately. He didn't say anything, but he didn't move. It was Joni who found the water heater. She came into the den with her face wrong, the social expression dropped. "There's water on the basement floor," she said. "A lot of it." Beckett was up. Silas was already standing. "Where's your water main?" Silas asked. "I don't, Beckett. Where's the utility room, I think, but I'm not sure which valve." Silas moved. Down the hall through the kitchen, and Cassidy was right behind him. He heard her, didn't look, and they went down the basement stairs into the sound of it. Water sheeting off the back wall where the supply line to the water heater had separated at the fitting. A clean split, too much pressure in too old copper. He swept his phone light across the utility wall. 3 valves. "Middle one," Cassidy said from his left, her own light up. "How do you know?" "Newer handle. The other two are the originals. He found it and turned. The sheeting slowed. He turned it further and it stopped. In the silence they could hear the last of it running into the floor drain. He stood up. Cassidy was 3 feet away with her phone still lit, looking at the pipe. She reached past him and touched the separated fitting, not grabbing it, just confirming what she'd seen, the professional habit of a woman who didn't trust diagnosis she hadn't made with her hands. Clean split, she said. Expansion stress. The cold snap and then the thaw. Yeah. They'll need a plumber tonight. Yeah. Beckett was at the bottom of the stairs with his phone already to his ear, Joni behind him, pale. Silas and Cassidy stood in the wet basement with the work done, and he looked at her in the phone light and she looked back at him, and it was not the look of coworkers. He didn't know what to call it. He knew what it was. They were the last to leave, helped stack towels and move boxes from the wet wall, and drank the last of the coffee in the kitchen while the plumber worked, and the party wound down to just the four of them. When Beckett walked them to the door, he put his hand on Silas's arm and said, quietly, "You're a good man, Sile." And it landed the way it would have landed coming from Trace, which was to say it landed somewhere it hadn't expected to land and stayed there. Outside the cold had returned fully. Stars. The thaw was done. Their breath came invisible shapes and the gravel drove crunched under their feet, and they walked to the trucks and stopped between them, the way they'd stopped on the way in, but it was different now. The party was over and they were still here, and the night was not asking them to do anything. "I'll follow you to the junction," she said. "Roads should be okay. The colds locked everything up again." "I'll follow you anyway." He looked at her. The starlight was not romantic, exactly. It was January in Ohio, and they were standing in a gravel driveway, and his shoes were still damp from the basement. But she was looking at him with her chin slightly up and her hands in her coat pockets, and he understood that she was waiting for something, that she had been waiting for a while, and that he had been making her wait without knowing, which was the same thing as knowing. "Why did you say a year?" he said. She was quiet for a moment. The cold moved between them. "Because that's how long you've been looking at me like you wanted to say something," she said. "I just filled in the blanks." He stood with that. "Cass," he said. "I know," she said. "Drive safe." She got in her Tahoe and he got in his truck, and the toolbox was on the floor behind the seat. He reached back and pulled it up and held it in his lap, the cold metal, the rattle of its interior, the heft of 11 years. He put his thumb on the latch, lift and press. He'd known the trick so long he'd forgotten it was a trick. He set the toolbox on the passenger seat. He drove. Her taillights were steady ahead of him on the county road, the fields on both sides disappearing into dark, the sky enormous. He thought about Trace, not grieving, or not only grieving but thinking about what Trace had said 3 weeks before November. "You know what happy looks like. You're just waiting to make sure it's not a trick," said offhand, almost bored, the way Trace said the things he most meant. Silas had told himself he didn't know what it meant. He had known what it meant. At the junction her blinker came on and his came on, and for that last mile he drove alone. And when he pulled into his driveway and shut off the truck, he sat for a moment with the engine ticking and the cold pressing at the windows. His phone lit up. "Cassidy, your mother already texted me. She wants to know if you're serious about me. Cassidy, also you're better at fixing pipes than lying." He looked at the screen. He looked at the toolbox on the seat beside him. Then he typed. "I wasn't lying about the year." He set the phone down. He got out and carried the toolbox into the garage and set it on the workbench, on the left side, where there was room. He didn't put it away, exactly, just put it down in a place where it could stay. The latch caught the light, rust on the hinges. The trick he'd known so long it had stopped feeling like knowledge and started feeling like just the way things were. He went inside. On the kitchen counter his phone lit up once. He didn't pick it up right away. He stood in the kitchen with his wet shoes and the house settling around him and the night outside and all of it. The year she'd named. The pipe they'd stopped together, her hand confirming the fitting, the way she'd looked at him in the basement light, sitting in him like water finding its level. Then he picked up the phone. "Cassidy, I know.